of Steve's unique gifts and strengths that we don't highlight as much as we could is his desire to share the platform. And that's really been the inspiration for the other voices of Key Life. And you'll be seeing a couple of those, not at their finest perhaps, but we do want to take whatever opportunities we can to introduce those. I see Pete Alwinson just walked in, and he's been one of Key Life's other voices for decades now, right? He started as a very young child. And Justin Holcomb with him, who's not only been part of the voices in speaking, but also in writing and so forth. Pete, with I was trying to remember, Q&A on Fridays for 20, yeah, something, mine sounds better. Let's make it 20. 20 years, approaching 20 years. And as well as his book, Like Father, Like Son, which has been a great gift to the Christian community. And it also gives me a chance to introduce a couple of the voices for Key Life. Zach Van Dyke, who is the teaching pastor at Summit Church, and Kevin Labby, the senior pastor here at Willow Creek. So I will get ready I'll start, tap dancing for the next 30 seconds while you're making your way? I really am not very good at that. But let me turn it over to you. I've talked for longer than I'm supposed to. And just before the hook comes out, I'll turn it over to these guys. Yeah. And a big welcome for Kevin and Zach.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Y'all are here to see Steve, so this feels a little bit awkward for us to be up here.
Agreed.
But I'm Zach. This is Kevin. We were given the task of roasting Steve before coming up. But the problem is, if you know me or Kevin, we're like really nice, and so I just kept thinking like, that doesn't sound like me. I would never say that about Steve. So I don't think this is going to go well.
I don't think this is going to go well either. Yeah. And I want to just tell you that I've been agonizing over this for months. And I've written out some jokes, which is the first sign that this is horribly awry.
This is not.
Nobody delivers jokes having read them. But I want to share with you what I came up with, and then you can let Zach and me know whether you think we should have gone ahead with this or not. The first one is this. It was mentioned that Steve wrote 20 books, right? It's actually 21 if you count the book of Genesis.
Well,
we might have been able.
But my one,
we might have been able.
That was good.
That could have worked.
I only had one, but it didn't sound like me. But I thought, no, it's not. It would still be 20 because I liked this book the first time I read it when it was titled "How to Talk So People Will Listen." And so, I mean, but that doesn't sound like me. That like Steve can just recycle content with new branding. Like I don't. That's not like me, though. I don't say things like that.
That is not like you. You're not at all like that. You're above that.
Like
I think the thing that when you reflect upon 20, 21 books or so, you just know Steve is such a hard worker, and you think every part of this guy is just always working except his hair follicles when you think about it. You think, though, that's really gone. Yes.
If that feels like that should have been my joke. Not,
yeah, probably
not, I mean...
See,
pot, kettle,
you're right. You're right.
I'm
seeing why people, before they go on the road, they do a lot of rehearsals. That would have been better teed up by you, admittedly. But here's the thing. If this is... it's cruel.
All right, let's go.
I'm already struggling,
okay,
Zach.
Right,
I'm already struggling.
You got 3 more, right?
Here's the thing. When you look in the scriptures, though, Paul says, God gives us these things to keep us humble. Right. Can you imagine if Steve's hair follicles actually did work? He would be the total package, right?
That's right.
He'd have the hair of Zach Van Dyke.
That's right.
He'd have like the voice of a white James Earl Jones.
Yes, which he does, yeah.
And he would even have the fashion of a county commissioner.
That was good. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. The khakis, the blue blazer, he's the whole thing.
He's
When
the
you think
whole
about
thing.
it, Steve wears khaki, blue blazers. There's not one person in this world that's worn the same outfit longer other than Bart Simpson. So
That's good,
Yeah,
man.
thank you. I thought that
all right,
was
let's
good.
give Kevin a hand. I think he did a good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Admittedly, very derivative. Don't go on Google and look for that joke because you'll find it in 100 other places.
Well, I just want to say, like Steve, thank you so much. I think probably most of the people in this room would be able to stand up and say how your bold proclamation of grace really has changed their life. And I know for me, as a very struggling, trying to be the best Christian I could be, all growing up, and then hitting a wall. When I hit the wall, I heard your voice, and I found you on the radio and on podcast, and it changed me completely. And I don't think that I would be a pastor right now if it weren't for you doing what you do. And this book, I joke. I mean, How to Talk So People Will Listen. It is the same book, but it's still good. And so I encourage you to buy it twice and read it. It really is a great book, and just being able to talk about things in our current context, Steve gives a very practical and very grace-filled instruction to us, and I know as a pastor, I'm going to utilize this a ton, so thank you for writing it, Steve.
Yes, thank you. And let me just echo that on a more serious note. The first time that I actually heard about Steve Brown, true story, it was a warning. I was told by somebody, don't read that guy. Don't read that guy. Yeah. It was a very uptight pastor that told me that. And after several years of ministering and realizing that my guilt-trippy sermons, my high-pressure tactics weren't resulting in the change of anybody, it was just causing people to give up. Another pastor came to me and he said, you've got to read this book. The book was Scandalous Freedom. And I remember reading that book twice, and in the first reading, weeping, and in the second reading, weeping all the more, as I realized how long I had been preaching and teaching in ways that were actually contrary to the very gospel that I have loved to preach. And so when I started to sense those things and started to learn a little bit more, started to be introduced to some of the voices, I think that's one of the beautiful things about Key Life and its partnership with New Growth Press and so many other things is when you're going to these sites and places, you're starting to realize that it's not just Steve, that there are others in partnership with him, others of like mind, other voices that can be trusted to encourage. And as I grew in that and started to go to events and hear these messages, it transformed everything. And suddenly wonderful things started happening in my church as people were feeling the burdens lifted rather than multiplied. And Steve, I just want to thank you so much. I echo Zach. I don't think I would be a pastor, at least for very long, if it weren't for you. So thank you very, very much.